He's never bothered doing a full 12-round spar, and he's proud of it. Moses Itauma is proud of it. According to him, according to Moses Itauma, there's no need to be in the ring for longer than you need to be. Here's a question. Is a fighter who's never been 12 rounds a risk, or simply a man who ends fights early? There is a risk here. Objectively, there is a risk here. There is a possibility that Hrgovic could extend Moses Itauma into the second half of the fight. There's a strong possibility. Now, I don't want to be strawmanned in the comments. I'm not saying it will go to the second half of the fight. I'm saying it could. There's a difference. But what happens if this fight goes into round 7? What happens if it goes into round 8? What happens if it goes into round 9, into round 10, etc.? If you're not preparing for 12 rounds and it goes 12 rounds, does that make you unprepared? If the fight goes long and the reflexes get slower, the speed of foot gets slower, the punches become less hurtful, this could get very, very interesting. But let's be honest. Hrgovic needs to be better defensively to enable this. And Hrgovic has a problem. He has a cut problem. And I wonder, will that southpaw jab from Moses Itauma bust up his face? I think Hrgovic needs to make some defensive adjustments in this fight, and I think that will be essential. I wonder, will Moses Itauma aim his southpaw jab to get Hrgovic's cut? When I envision it, I think, from the southpaw position, is he going to feint? Then maybe jab to the chest, maybe then feint, and then do a right jab to the left eyebrow. And that, that could cause Hrgovic some serious problems, because if Moses Itauma is able to cut Filip Hrgovic, particularly early in the fight, that could be a significant factor. And perhaps the unanswered question is not whether Itauma can dominate the early rounds, it is who he becomes when dominance disappears and fatigue begins negotiating with technique. And the premise here is that the fight will go into the second half, and we don't know. I mean, Filip Hrgovic has a very good chin. So you think, okay, if you was to go 1 to 10 on chin and you put Hrgovic as an 8, maybe you put him as a 9. But many people look at Hrgovic's defense and they might give that like a 5 or a 6 or maybe a 4. So there's a real question here in terms of will the fight extend into the second half of the fight? And then the next idea is the coldest line of the interview, which is from Moses Itauma when he says, whether I knock him out in the first or the last, I'm still going to get paid the same. This, of course, is objectively true, and the great Lennox Lewis would say, I don't get paid for overtime. That was one of his lyrics. But there may be a better question here, and that may be, does he have elite conditioning to operate in an optimal manner for 12 rounds? Does he know how to pace himself and accelerate his output effectively? There is one thing doing it in the gym, but surely it's different doing it under the bright lights. George Foreman, when he fought Muhammad Ali in the Thriller of Manila, a fantastic event, punched himself out over 8 rounds, and therefore Muhammad Ali was able to knock him out. Hrgovic's experience could be a benefit to him here, because he should understand pacing himself over the 12 rounds. He understands when he can drop the tempo, when he can raise the tempo, and he should be able to pace himself effectively. And of course, when we're talking about pacing ourselves and being strong at the beginning, middle, and end of the fight, this is all part, I think, of developing your ring IQ, and it's all part of that ring adaptability. And here's an interesting thing here. Moses Itauma doesn't know objectively if he can do 12 rounds under the bright lights. He might be able to do it in the gym, but can he do it under the bright lights? So the further this fight goes, the more questions will be asked. And you wonder, within the Moses Itauma psychology, is he questioning that? And, knocking somebody out early demonstrates power, but knowing exactly when to spend that power demonstrates intelligence. And championship boxing eventually demands both. Now, the next idea is that he's been asking the real question since he was a kid. Will you remember me if I don't become a world champion? And is the boy who never wanted to be forgotten the real reason the man refuses to slow down? Maybe that's the motivation. Maybe that's part of the purpose. Maybe that's what fuels the engine. Maybe that's what makes him such a disciplined athlete. But in a sense, in a philosophical sense, perhaps Moses Itauma is not really chasing a belt at all. Perhaps the belt is simply the physical proof that his name will survive long after his career does.